If I asked you right now to name the absolute deadliest hazard in a typical workplace, what instantly pops into your head?
Oh, I mean, it's human nature to go straight to the extremes, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'd probably picture, I don't know, high voltage wiring sparking in a utility grid or toxic chemicals in a lab.
Right, or maybe like a massive crane hoisting steel beams hundreds of feet in the air.
Yeah.
We naturally equate danger with those visually intimidating environments.
We do. We think of hard hats and, bright yellow hazard tape. But statistically, the deadliest piece of equipment in the corporate world is, well, it's probably sitting in the parking lot right now.
Yeah, the company car.
Exactly. The company car, the delivery van, the absolute deadliest occupational hazard is just the mundane, everyday act of driving a vehicle.
It is the ultimate invisible threat, right? And I think precisely because it is so incredibly common, we just become entirely numb to it.
And that numbness is exactly what we're going to try and break through for you today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a huge topic.
It really is. So our mission today is to explore how the world's biggest companies are completely rethinking and honestly just tearing down and rebuilding their entire approach to this single deadliest occupational hazard.
Yeah.
We're pulling all of this from a really compelling thought leadership paper by SnSD Consultants, and its title, Road Safety from Paper to People.
And, what's fascinating here is that this isn't some dry, bureaucratic discussion about compliance checklists.
Right. Nobody wants to hear about checklists.
Exactly. It's genuinely a masterclass in human psychology, systems design, and the immense operational challenge of taking these abstract corporate policies and translating them into actual life-saving behaviors out on the asphalt.
We're going to take you on a bit of a journey today. We'll start with the truly shocking statistics of workplace road fatalities, and then we'll look at why throwing a massive 120-page procedural manual at a driver is a recipe for absolute failure.
Total failure.
Yeah. And finally, we'll explore how stripping everything down to just a few simple rules, combined with some really revealing digital tools, can actually drive safety violations down to absolute zero.
And I want to stress that zero isn't just a theoretical corporate buzzword here. The paper includes a remarkable 12-month, real-world case study detailing exactly how one organization actually achieved it.
So let's start by establishing the sheer scale of this problem, because honestly, until you hear the raw numbers, it's kind of hard to grasp why such a massive overhaul on corporate safety thinking was even needed.
The numbers are grim.
Yeah. Here's a very grim reality check directly from the source material. Every 104 minutes, a worker somewhere in the world dies from a work-related injury. And the single most common cause of those deaths, a vehicle incident.
Wow. That statistic alone should stop any operations manager right in their tracks, every hour and 44 minutes.
It's heavy, and the data from the 2024 U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics backs this up with terrifying clarity. Their census of fatal occupational injuries shows that transportation incidents account for 38% of all occupational fatalities.
38%?
Yeah, that is nearly 1 in every 3 workplace deaths. The BLS reported that in 2024 alone, roadway incidents involving motorized land vehicles claimed over 1,000 lives. 1,146, to be exact.
And we have to dispel a myth right now because people hear this and think, oh, this is an exposure isolated to the oil and gas industry or heavy industrial logistics.
Right, like big rigs only.
Exactly, but it's not. I mean, yes, the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, the IOGP, they analyzed 405 personal safety fatal incidents and found 45 were directly driving related. But this threat permeates every single sector.
It sits right there on the balance sheets of consumer goods companies, too. Like take PepsiCo, for example.
Oh, that's a great example.
The paper notes that their company-owned fleet drives approximately 1.2 billion miles annually. Just think about the sheer statistical probability of a catastrophic incident when you're putting 1.2 billion miles on the road every single year.
It's astronomical, which means road safety cannot just be sidelined as a generic health and safety talking point in an orientation video.
Right.
It is a massive material operational risk for literally any company where vehicles, people, and logistics intersect.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think there's a huge psychological hurdle we have to jump over here, both for the companies and, for you listening.
Definitely.
We often treat driving as this passive activity, right? Like a commute. You get in the car, you put on the radio, you just zone out, and muscle memory completely takes over.
Oh, we all do it. Highway hypnosis.
Exactly. But what these massive organizations are finally realizing is that driving for work is an active, high-risk, operational task. It requires just as much rigorous, unbroken focus as operating a multi-ton excavator on a crowded construction site.
That is such a critical distinction. And it aligns exactly with how top-tier safety professionals categorize this risk today. In the industry, road safety is now classified as a SIF risk.
SIF?
Yeah, SIF serious injury and fatality risk. When an organization flags an activity as a SIF risk, they're formally declaring that if something goes wrong, the outcome won't just be a scraped knee. It's highly likely to be catastrophic or deadly.
Okay, so historically, how are companies handling this? Because it's not like corporate boards just suddenly discovered that car crashes are bad.
Right.
What was the standard operating procedure before the shift?
Well, historically, safety departments kind of treated road risk as an unavoidable statistical tax on doing business. The primary strategy wasn't actual prevention, it was liability mitigation.
Ah, liability mitigation.
Yeah, and the weapon of choice for liability mitigation is paperwork. Massive, overwhelming amounts of paperwork.
Which brings us right to the core philosophy of the SnSD consultants paper, moving from paper to people. Because the historical approach was, frankly, bordering on the absurd.
Oh, totally.
The consultants noted that one of their previous clients had a road safety procedure that was over 120 pages long. 120 pages.
It's wild. Put yourself in the shoes of a delivery driver or a third-party contractor for a second.
No.
You're sitting in a sweltering cab, you're running behind schedule, and someone hands you a 120-page, dense legal document detailing how to operate a vehicle you've already been driving for 10 years.
It's an impossible cognitive load.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Complex procedural content gets entirely lost in the daily grind.
It's exactly like the terms and conditions on a Safecore update. Nobody actually reads it.
Nope.
You just scroll rapidly to the bottom, check the box, and sign your name so you can just get on with your job.
Yeah, it creates this illusion of safety.
Yeah.
It protects the company in a courtroom after a crash, but it does absolutely nothing to protect the driver's physical body before the crash even happens.
Wait, hold on, though. I understand the desire for simplicity, but doesn't reducing 120 pages of comprehensive safety protocols down to just a few bullet points open the company up to massive legal loopholes?
That's a fair question.
Like, what if a specific obscure hazard just isn't covered by a simplified rule?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to understand that complexity is the absolute enemy of compliance.
Yeah.
You're basically trading comprehensive legal padding for actual, verifiable behavioral change. SnSD's replacement for that massive manual is a pragmatic framework they call the triplet model.
The triplet model.
Right. It breaks the entire ecosystem of road safety down into 3 core interdependent pillars: plant, process, and people.
All right, break that down for us. How do these 3 actually interact in the real world?
So they aren't just 3 separate buckets. They form a sequential chain of dependencies. A failure in one immediately nullifies the other 2. It starts with plant.
Plant, meaning the physical assets, right?
Exactly. The vehicle condition, fleet readiness, and the baseline hardware, like in-vehicle monitoring systems or IVMS.
So the hardware establishes the baseline of safety because, I mean, if the brakes fail on a steep grade, it fundamentally does not matter how well rested the driver is.
Right.
Or how perfectly the logistics team planned the route. The vehicle has to be a safe environment to begin with.
Precisely. You have to have a safe truck.
Yeah.
Once the plan is secure, you move to process. This is about how the journey itself is actively managed.
Like route planning.
Yeah, it involves risk-based journey management, meaning dispatchers are actually planning routes to minimize high-risk intersections or, dangerous weather conditions.
That makes sense.
Process also means establishing crystal clear, non-negotiable requirements for contractors before they're even awarded a contract.
Oh, so instead of handing a contractor a 120-page manual on day 1, you filter them out during the bidding phase based on strict operational requirements.
Exactly. Set the standard early. And the final link of the chain is people. This covers driver competence, medical fitness to work, and creating an actual intervention culture. Because at the end of the day, road safety is fundamentally a behavioral challenge.
So if you've thrown out the giant manual, what are you actually giving the people to follow? SnSD points to the Simplified Life-Saving Rules, or LSRs, and there are just 5 of them.
Just 5. And they are relentlessly specific. Number 1, no speeding. You drive to the conditions and the posted limits. Number 2, mandatory seatbelt use for the driver and all passengers.
Every single time the engine is on.
Every single time. Number 3, no driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Number 4, no mobile phone usage while driving.
Which is huge today with smartphones everywhere.
Huge. And number 5, being fit to drive, which encompasses fatigue management and pre-journey health checks.
5 rules. You could literally fit that on an index card.
Yeah, you could stick it right to the dashboard.
But does stripping it down that far actually work? I mean, human nature is stubborn.
The evidence backing this up is staggering, honestly. The source paper points out that data from multiple industries shows the disciplined, consistent application of just these 5 life-saving rules can reduce the probability of a serious injury or fatality event by up to 80%.
An 80% reduction just by getting people to consistently follow 5 basic rules. That's incredible.
It really proves the consultant's point. Rules that are memorable actually get followed.
Right. But memory and index cards alone aren't enough, right?
Right.
Like you said, human nature. We take shortcuts when we think nobody is looking.
Oh, always.
If you've ever managed a remote team, you know exactly how difficult it is to monitor what they do when you aren't in the room. So how do you enforce these rules inside a moving vehicle hundreds of miles away?
Well, that's where the plant and process parts of the triplet merge through digitalization. Companies are using technology to create real-time visibility. FedEx is actually a prime example of this working at scale.
What did FedEx do?
They deployed video event data recorders, or VEDRs, across all their pickup and delivery vehicles. And by doing that, they saw a 19% reduction in accidents per million miles since 2017.
Wow, 19% across a fleet the size of FedEx is a massive number of avoided collisions.
It really is. They also implemented forward collision avoidance mitigation technology on their line haul tractors.
Like an automated safety net.
Exactly. It acts as a real-time safety net.
Yeah.
That resulted in a 43% reduction in forward collision accidents since 2018. Coca-Cola AsiaCheck did something similar across their logistics-intensive distribution network.
What was their approach?
They mandated telemetry monitoring and installed rear-view cameras on all their delivery vehicles. The technology basically acts as an objective, unblinking observer.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The source material outlines a paradox that occurs when companies first roll out these digital monitoring tools.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Right. You would logically think that the moment you install GPS and speeding monitors, safety instantly improves. But what actually happens is that recorded safety violations usually spike sharply right after the technology is turned on.
Yeah, the initial data can send absolute shockwaves through an organization's leadership.
I mean, think about how terrifying that must be for a safety manager. You just spent millions of dollars rolling out a state-of-the-art digital monitoring program to fix your safety culture, and suddenly your dashboard is lighting up red.
Everything's flashing red.
Violations are skyrocketing across the board. It looks like your program is a complete disaster, and your drivers have just lost their minds.
It's a highly counterintuitive moment, but it is actually a massive success story.
Wait, how is a spike in violations a success?
Because the driving behavior didn't suddenly worsen just because you installed a camera or a telematics tracker. The technology merely revealed what the paper calls hidden exposure.
Hidden exposure. So the danger was just always there in the dark.
Always. Your drivers were always speeding. They were always checking their phones. They were always taking shortcuts. You just didn't know it because it wasn't being objectively recorded.
Wow.
The fundamental rule of risk management is that you cannot manage a risk you cannot see. So while that initial spike in violations is super jarring, achieving that painful visibility is the absolute necessary first step toward actual control.
That is a total paradigm shift. You're not creating new problems. You're finally diagnosing the chronic illness you didn't know you had.
Beautifully put.
So the theory makes sense, the technology makes sense, but how does this actually play out over time with real, stubborn human beings?
Yeah, the messy human element.
Exactly. The SnSD paper includes a fantastic real-world case study tracing a 12-month timeline of a client organization implementing this exact system. Let's dig into that.
This data chart is incredibly revealing because it tracks the nonlinear human reaction to these systemic changes over a full year. It's not just a straight line down to zero.
Let's walk through it. So the program officially launched in January, but it was preceded by a really robust 6-month pilot phase.
Right. They didn't just ambush the drivers with cameras one morning.
No, they had leadership sessions. Yeah. They trained the drivers heavily on those 5 life-saving rules, and they held dedicated town halls just to reinforce intervention techniques.
So communication was heavily front-loaded. They set the stage so the expectations were completely transparent.
Right. So January hits and the monitoring program goes live. In the December, right before the launch, they were sitting at 68 total road safety violations. When January closed out, that number dropped to 40.
Okay, so a drop.
Yeah, significant immediate drop just from the program becoming visible and formal.
What you're seeing there is the initial Hawthorne effect.
Wait, the Hawthorne effect, for those who might not remember their Psych 101, that's the phenomenon where individuals alter their behavior simply because they know they're being observed, right?
Exactly. When the cameras and trackers first turn on, everyone is on their absolute best behavior. They're acutely aware of the observation.
But the Hawthorne effect is famously temporary.
Very temporary. As the novelty wears off, the psychological weight of the observation fades, and people slowly start reverting to their baseline habits. Which is why the numbers stabilized for a few months, but they didn't drop to zero. They were still having persistent violations.
And then we hit month 7. Around July, the organization introduced GPRS-based vehicle speed monitoring. How does that differ from the baseline telematics they already had?
So standard GPS might just ping a vehicle's location every few minutes, to help dispatchers track a delivery route. GPRS, or General Packet Radio Service, allows for continuous, high-frequency data transmission.
Okay, continuous data.
Yeah, it meant the company now had real-time, granular visibility into the exact speed of the vehicle at any given second, and they could match it against the posted speed limit of that specific road.
So there was literally nowhere left to hide. And just like we talked about with the hidden exposure paradox, the introduction of this hyper-specific GPRS caused a temporary spike in visible, non-compliant behaviors on the dashboard.
Because suddenly, management could see every single speeding event.
This has to be the critical crucible moment for the organization. They now have undeniable data showing ongoing, serious exposure despite 6 months of training and monitoring.
Yeah, the pressure is on. How does leadership react? Do they sweep it under the rug or do they act?
Well, they acted, and they acted at the very top. In December, nearly a full year into the program, the CEO issued a direct leadership communication.
That's a huge move.
It was. This wasn't some automated memo from an HR portal. It was a message explicitly reaffirming the absolute non-negotiable nature of the life-saving rules.
And the result of that?
The result of that single communication was that violations absolutely plummeted. By month 12, the end of that year, the recorded violations hit 0. Absolute 0.
It is a stunning behavioral result.
So, what does this all mean? I really want to dig into this because it feels like the psychological crux of the whole deep dive. They had IVMS, they had continuous GPRS speed tracking, they had 6 months of pilot training, town halls.
Yeah, they had all the tools.
But it was a single email from the CEO that finally acted as the catalyst to get them to 0. Why?
Well, this raises an important question about the true nature of corporate culture, right? And how frontline workers test boundaries.
How so?
The most critical shift in this entire 12-month case study wasn't the introduction of the GPRS technology. The critical shift was moving road safety from being viewed as a delegated transport topic to treating it as a core governance SEF risk.
A delegated transport topic, meaning like, oh, that's the logistics department's problem, that's the fleet manager's headache to sort out.
Exactly. Frontline workers are incredibly adept at sniffing out the difference between HR paperwork and operational reality.
That's so true.
When a safety initiative is delegated down to middle management, the drivers subconsciously know that the highest levels of executive leadership aren't actually looking at the dashboard. They assume there's wiggle room.
Right. A rule doesn't truly exist until leadership proves they are willing to enforce it.
Precisely. When the CEO steps in and communicates directly about those 5 specific life-saving rules, it shatters the illusion of wiggle room.
It makes it real.
Very real. It proved to every single driver, contractor, and site supervisor that these rules weren't just liability shields. They were actual, non-negotiable field behaviors tied directly to executive accountability.
So the technology gave the CEO the visibility to finally see the hidden exposure, but it required human leadership to actually extinguish it.
Yes, technology enables the visibility, but human leadership enforces the standard.
That is the exact formula for getting to 0. That is such a powerful synthesis of all these moving parts. So let's recap the journey we've been on for you today.
Let's do it.
We started by reevaluating a hazard that hides in plain sight. Road safety isn't just a commute. It is a universal, serious injury and fatality risk that claims nearly a third of all occupational lives.
And we saw that the traditional solution of liability mitigation, throwing a 120-page dense manual at a driver, is functionally useless for preventing accidents in the field.
Right. The real solution, as demonstrated by the world's biggest fleets and outlined in the SnSD paper, is shifting from paper to people.
Using the triplet model.
Exactly. Ensuring the plant is safe, the process is rigorous, and the people are guided by just 5 core, non-negotiable rules.
And leaning into digital visibility to uncover those terrifying hidden exposures.
Yes, and finally, anchoring all of that technology in visible, top-down leadership accountability.
The paper leaves the reader with a very direct operational challenge. What would it take for your organization to get to zero?
It's a great question.
The data proves that zero is not just some motivational poster slogan. It is a mathematically and behaviorally achievable reality if the right framework is relentlessly applied.
It really changes how you look at every delivery van, every company truck, and, well, every contractor you share the highway with.
It does. And actually, taking everything we've synthesized today about corporate fleets, I'd like to leave you with a thought that extends even further into our everyday lives.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So we have just seen how major multinational corporations are utilizing telematics, AI cameras, and strict behavioral monitoring to achieve literally zero driving violations in massive commercial fleets.
Right.
They are proving, at scale, that the technology works and the behavioral science works.
The blueprint is undeniably there.
So if the corporate world can achieve zero violations and zero fatalities by removing the anonymity of the driver, how long will it be before these exact same technologies, the continuous speed limiters, the mandatory telematics, the strict behavioral monitoring, become mandatory for everyday civilian drivers?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If we know definitively that unmonitored manual driving is the single deadliest hazard we face as a species, will society eventually view traditional, private, unmonitored driving as an unacceptable public risk?
That's a heavy thought.
Will the hidden exposure of our daily civilian commutes eventually be brought into the light by the very same systems currently governing the corporate world?
That is a fascinating and maybe slightly terrifying thought to end on, because as we established right at the beginning, the most dangerous hazard isn't the heavy machinery or the chemical spill.
Not at all.
It's the mundane, everyday act of getting behind the wheel. We hope this deep dive has given you a completely new perspective on this invisible universal threat and exactly what it takes, both technologically and psychologically, to drive those risks down to zero. Until next time.